Today's story is a true story. It's about Australia's female Hannibal Lecter. I hope you guys brought your appetites with you, because you sure are not going to want to miss what we're cooking up today. Viewer discretion is advised for this meal. In 1955, in South Wales, Australia, Katherine Knight was born. But the sad thing is, she was born from an extremely highly dysfunctional family. Both her parents were alcoholics. Her older siblings fought with her all the time. Even her neighbors didn't want anything to do with her because they hated her family. But despite all this, Katherine Knight was determined to succeed in her life and have a family of her own. But every time she tried to date, it just didn't work out because I guess her dysfunctional family caused her to have some mental issues. But in 1995, at the age of 40, Katherine Knight would meet John Price, also aged 40. And she would fall head over heels for this guy. This guy was a nice guy. He felt sorry for her and just wanted to take her under his wings. So she would move in his house with his 3 daughters, which they will love her also. But despite all this, it just wouldn't last. Their problems would start happening when Katherine would ask John, "Hon, when are we getting married?" He would reply back, "Babe, I just don't got what it takes to marry again. I just got out of a failed marriage. And honestly, I don't think I could ever get married again." So this marriage issue would drive them both apart. And one day in early February in the year 2000, they were both in the kitchen talking about it again. And it got heated, and Katherine would grab a knife and slice his chest. And John would go like this, "Ah! You just cut me! Get out of my house!" And they both knew a line had been crossed. Katherine would move out to a nearby apartment. Days and weeks would pass by. Katherine started to feel so lonely, and she thought to herself, "Wow, John was really a nice guy. Let me go make up with him." She had a key to his house. So on February 29th, she went to his house, opened the door, and entered. His 3 kids were there. She explained the situation and sent them off to the babysitter's house to sleep over. Then she went to the kitchen and wrote John a note. This is what she wrote. She said, "John, don't worry, the kids are fine. They're at the babysitter's house, and I just had to step out for a moment and I will return. I really want us to make up." And she went outside to go buy lingerie. When John returned home, he would read this note, but it really upset him, because this woman was entering his house without permission and making decisions about his kids without even asking him. So he went to the fridge, opened it up, and grabbed a beer, and went and sat on the couch waiting for her. The next morning at 6 a.m., John was supposed to be at work, but he never showed up. And his company knew John was very reliable. So they decided to send someone over to his house to see what's going on. When his fellow co-worker went to his house, he saw John's car outside. So he said, maybe John just overslept. So he went to the door, knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. No answer. He told himself, let me try knocking a little harder. Knock, knock, knock. Still no answer. So he said, I'm just gonna go back to the office. This guy's probably playing hooky like little kids do in high school. Then when he was about to leave, he realized that the edge of the door had some blood on it. Then he started to panic. He said, John's probably hurt. I see blood. So he went around the house and started banging on the window. Bang, 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 bang. Hey, John! John, are you okay? Still no answer. So he decided to go back to the office and explain the situation. And he told them that he saw blood and John's car was there and no one was answering. He called the police. When the police got to John's house, they saw his car parked They knocked on the front door, still no answer. They went around back. When they went around back, they looked on the ground and they found a plate of food like it was thrown out of a window. They looked around, there was a window there. But strangely, it was closed. So they went to the window, peeked inside, and saw a table filled with food. They went to the back door, knocked, no answer. They kicked the door in and went inside and saw that table filled with food. Then they navigated to the living room. As soon as they entered the living room, it was blood everywhere. Then there was a big puddle of blood leading behind the couch. So they went behind the couch and they found Katherine curled up, barely alive. They checked for a pulse, and her pulse was beating like this. Bop, bop, bop. Barely alive. So one police officer stays with Katherine, while the other one pulls out his gun and follows another blood trail. He was looking around, and then it was like a curtain. So he moves the curtain, and there is a closet. So he opens up the closet, nothing there. He said, wow, that's strange. There's a blood leading here, but nobody's in the closet or anything. Then he realized on his arm, it's bleeding like it's blood. But then he said, I didn't get hurt. This is not my blood. Then he looks at that curtain. But oh my God, he was horrified. That's not a curtain. That was no curtain. That was John's skin hanging upside down. You see, Katherine worked as a butcher at this meat processing company. Let me tell you the story now that took place the other night. John waited for Katherine until 11 p.m. on the couch, but she never showed up. So he told himself, I got work the next day at 6 a.m. I better head off to bed, 'cause time is money. I can't be taking a day off. So he went off to bed and fell asleep. About an hour later, Katherine entered the bedroom with this black, sexy lingerie on. And you know how guys are when it comes to sex. They just can't think straight. So they had sexual intercourse and fell asleep in each other's arms. Katherine would wake up in the middle of the night, so disgusted with this guy. This guy is using me, she told herself. So she slowly made her way out of bed and went back to her apartment. You see, Katherine was a butcher, and she had this butchering set that she took and returned back to John's house. She slowly crawled on top of him and boom, stabbed him in his chest. As soon as that happened, he was in shock, so he threw her off him and just ran out. He was running to the front door of the house. And then he opened the door, grabbed the edge. That's how the blood got there. And he fainted because he was leaking blood. So Katherine comes behind him, pulls him in, and stabs him 36 times to death. Katherine would enter the kitchen and grab a pot and fill it up with water and put it on the stove and let it boil. Then she would return to John, drag him all the way near that closet, and start working. This woman was a butcher, so she grabbed his skin, cut it all the way to remove it from his body. And this woman was perfect. She removed all the skin in one piece and hung it above. That is what we thought was the curtain. Now it's time to cook. Katherine would cut off John's head, take it, and go back to that stove that she had a pot with boiling water on and put his head right inside the pot and let it cook. Then she would return to John's body, cut it up, and make these type of different dishes. That was actually the food the cops had seen when they entered the premises. And she made these name tags in front of each plate with John's children's names on it. She wanted John's kids to eat them. Then she made a special dish for herself and started eating it. But I guess it was missing a little salt or pepper or something, because she didn't like it, so she took that dish and threw it outside the window. that was actually the dish the cops had seen outside. Then she looked around and she said, I'm not gonna go to prison for John. He's not worth my time. I'm just gonna kill myself. So she went and got sleeping pills and took them all and collapsed behind the couch. The paramedics were able to revive her and bring her to the hospital. After she was stabilized at the hospital, she was arrested for John's death. And then eventually she would be found guilty and given life without the possibility of parole. But the judge did something completely different in this case. He took her file and literally stamped it to never be released. Katherine Knight is the first woman in Australian history to ever receive life without the possibility of parole. Katherine Knight is still alive in prison till this day. Thank you guys so much for watching today's show. I know it was hard. Not everyone has the stomach or the appetite for this stuff. Even Katherine Knight couldn't eat what she cooked up and threw it outside the window. I'm Ahmed Basyan. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm out of this joint.